All right, y'all. So Lamar, EDC, and John Harbaugh, they just finished a press conference earlier this afternoon. And obviously, it was a press conference like basically reintroducing Lamar back, obviously, because now, as of this afternoon, he has officially signed the contract. So everything's set in stone. I'm sure in the coming days we'll get more information out about how his contract affects the cap room and all that. But I definitely wanted to go over a few takeaways that I had after watching and replaying the live stream a few times. Number one thing that I took away definitely was that Lamar wanted to stay the whole time. So that definitely lets us know that when he made the trade request, it was a negotiation tactic, which was smart. Obviously, it made sense. But it's definitely relieving to give more insight now on what was going on. Obviously, because when it happened, it felt like the sky was falling. Everybody's losing their mind. We're all obviously thinking this is the end, or it could be the end. So it's definitely so yeah. It's cool to hear that he never really intended to leave. It was interesting seeing even when even to this day, a lot of people were trying to say that, well, what he did was like, they're trying to say that him requesting a trade was dumb or this or that, or they're saying, oh, he's trying to save face because nobody who wanted him and all this other nonsense. When again, in reality, it was a negotiation tactic. Whether you're trying to negotiate a salary or whether you're trying to buy a house or whatever, like many times in life, if you're actually living life and if you're actually doing anything, there's gonna be times where you're gonna have to negotiate. And in Lamar Jackson's specific situation, he knows that he had ultimate leverage. So he knows he has ultimate leverage. So he exercised some, he flexed some power, he flexed some muscle, obviously, because he knows that right when he sent that post out, Harbaugh was finna sit down at that and answer some questions. And it definitely was a smart power move that I do believe, as as cutthroat as it may come off, it was definitely necessary. And it's funny that whenever players do moves like that, the first thing people say is try to say they're evil or greedy or this or that. But when teams do it, they make excuses for them and say that it's just business, which to me that doesn't make sense to me. Like, why is it not considered business either way? Which goes into one of the other points that I took away, was that Lamar was not as emotional with the handling of this as people assumed he was. Again, whenever these type of situations play out, people just assume that the player is emotional and this and that, and as if they're incapable of being a businessman, and they assume that the team is not, when in many cases it could actually be the opposite. Lamar's used to facing heavy levels of scrutiny all year long, every single year. He's already one of the most scrutinized players in the history of sports. So I'm sure that he's not just saying what he's saying to save face. I do believe that he did approach this from a business perspective. Just like I do believe that when he sent out that tweet requesting the trade a month ago, again, that was not coming from an emotional place of feeling hurt or this or that. It was just simply coming from having a cutthroat business mentality and understanding the perfect time to strategically put that out to the public. Next takeaway I took away was the fact that in a very subtle way, Lamar did confirm that teams did reach out. One of the biggest points that people were speculating on was the idea that nobody wanted him and nobody this and that. When in reality, because Lamar doesn't have an agent, there's so much about there's so much about the information there's so much about all the stuff that has unfolded the past couple months that we don't really know the answer to, and we may never really know, because people just assume that, oh, nobody knows where to contact him, he's hard to get in touch with. That's a load of crap. Think about your day-to-day life. One of the biggest gems I could tell you is that when people want to find you, they know where to find you. If you're that person, to compare it to back in the days in school, if you were that kid who always had like a pack of gum or Tic Tacs, it didn't matter where you were in that school. People who did not know you or talk to you like that would randomly track you down. Same thing still applies in the real world. Just that's why you always see stories, not to go too far off on a tangent, but that's why you also see stories about when these people hit the lottery or when they hit the lottery or go viral or get drafted, make it in entertainment, whatever. You see these stories that they'll have where they're talking about a bunch of relatives that they haven't seen or never met in the first place or haven't seen in years. They just randomly just like pop up out the blue, like they start falling out the sky. People know if people want to find you, they know how to find you. Lamar's friends with a lot of other NFL players. These teams can get a hold of him whenever they want to. So I definitely, again, he said it real subtle, like it didn't matter, obviously, because he himself said that the whole time he wasn't really thinking about that. He just wanted to work out a deal with the Ravens. But that did catch my attention because that was him admitting that teams did reach out. And obviously it's irrelevant at this point, but in the back of my mind, I'm always going to kind of wonder what teams was it that reached out? Like my guess most likely is the Patriots and the Niners. But again, we'll never know. So that, I guess that's always going to be something that'll always get lost in like Ravens lore for the future, is just wondering what teams were actually trying to make that move behind the scenes. John Harbaugh had a moment in that press conference where he low-key hinted at retiring. Like he had a moment where he said something to the effect of, "Hey, 10 years from now, when Lamar's still playing, and I'm no longer here, blah blah blah." Now, granted, that's not a big thing to take away, but that's still interesting that Harbaugh, either from his own will or maybe they're preparing to, maybe they already let him know that they're about to transition into a new coach. I don't know what could be happening, but I did think that's something about that just stood out to me, because I don't think that was just a casual, "Hey, I may leave in a couple years." It felt like something was there to that. Like Harbaugh, either he himself has already set a hard date in his mind of when he wants to retire, or maybe the Ravens have already informed him that they may be transitioning away from him sooner or later. But yeah, that's definitely something else I was thinking about. Another thing I was definitely excited about was hearing Lamar give an update on the status of his PCL injury. I've heard a few rumors here and there about what was going on with it, but I didn't know what was up with it. So to hear straight from the horse's mouth that he's saying himself that he's been healthy now for about a month, and he also another one of the people from the press, they brought it back up and they asked him again, like specifically like, "Hey, are you cleared to play?" And he responded with yes. So I'm definitely excited to hear that, because of the fact that there wasn't major news related to the status of his knee. In the back of my mind, that kind of had me a little nervous, because it made me think, what if he may have needed surgery? But, obviously, if he's been cleared for over a month now, that means, everything's in the right direction. So we're going to get back to business. Another thing I definitely took away was when Lamar, as he was answering questions related to his new set of wide receivers and the changes in that room, like he brought up the fact that, he brought up the fact that he wants to throw for 6,000 yards. And y'all already know I definitely want to see it. So people could laugh, but people could laugh all they want, but all of us that are real Ravens fans and that really see the changes that have been happening this offseason, that Lamar putting up 5,000, Lamar putting up 6,000, let alone just 5,000. That's absolutely possible. So I'm definitely excited to see how that goes. Because again, people got to realize in 2019, for many of those fourth quarters of those games we were up by so many points that we ended up sitting Lamar in the fourth quarter anyway. So he didn't even get a chance to even pad his stats. This season, I don't think they're gonna do that. Even if the game's a blowout, I think they're gonna really try to stomp people's heads through the ground. Last thing that two more things. Three more things. Lamar didn't fully commit to going to OTAs. They asked him about it. He kind of like danced around it. He may go, he may not. Obviously, it doesn't really matter. But I'm sure from a morale standpoint, like a lot of fans and even the front office probably wants him of all people to show up, even though it's voluntary and you don't have to. So we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, we know Odell a few weeks ago, he didn't commit to going to that either. But that doesn't mean they're not going to be working together. They just, people may just have their own trainers that they prefer to be with during those times. And it's voluntary. So it's like, hey, if your job's telling you there's a voluntary thing that you really don't want to go to, you can't blame the people that were already there for a while for turning that down and saying, yeah, I'm not going to that. EDC, when talking in this presser, EDC also made a joke that he preferred Lamar the player over Lamar the agent. And also he made a similar joke like a day or two ago in like an interview with Mike Florio. As he was doing this, he was doing that in a way of like sort of giving props to Lamar as an agent and bringing up, how stern he can be and how straightforward. And I know to an extent that bothers a lot of people, like all the naysayers that kept thinking that him and his mom were incapable of getting this deal done. I know that just like makes their skin crawl, knowing that that he was actually capable, of pulling something like this off. Like I know, like that moment, even shortly after the presser, obviously Lamar officially signed, put ink to paper. And then he had that brief moment, they posted an Instagram video where he low key said, "Whoo, finally." I know everybody in the Ravens flock could relate to that last moment. Just even if you believed and had the utmost faith that it was all gonna work out, that's still something that could it's still something that's just relieving, just to know, okay, finally, it's there's no takebacks. It's a wrap. It's set in stone. We ready to ride. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Was there anything major that you took away from the presser?